10 random magic cards rated day number 114, everybody. That's a lot of days. First card of the day is Terashi's Cry from Champions of Kamigawa over here. 4 mana, 3 and a white for an arcane sorcery. Tap up to 3 creatures. Wow. That's terrible. That's pretty bad. Like, maybe it helps you get through for combat damage or something. And the art is great. This Jim Murray art, I don't even know what's going on with this giant spirit. He's doing like a mouth beam. He looks cool, but the landscape under him looks cool too. So good job on the art, but man, the card's just butts. The card is booze, buttholes. I'm going to give it like a 1.2, I guess. Like, again, I guess you get 3 for combat damage once. It costs 4 mana. This card's a 1. This card's so bad. Next is Vashta Narada from Doctor Who. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 1/1 alien horror with indestructible, as well as shadow. That means it can only block or be blocked by dudes as shadow then. It also has morbid. So at the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Vashta. So let's go over this again. So you get a 3 mana 1/1 with indestructible that is more or less unblockable. And then if a creature dies in a turn, each end step, not just yours, beginning of each end step, creature died, this guy gets +1/+1 counter. So, okay. That means that he's going to get through for unblockable. And I've read this card. I know I've read this card a bunch. I just forgot what it did, and I'm trying to, like, remember. So, yeah, it gets bigger most turns because creatures just die as a consequence of playing Magic. But it won't die because it has indestructible. So your opponents have to, like, exile it somehow to do anything about it, especially considering no one plays any other card with shadow. So like as creatures die, it's going to become like a 5/5 or something. Yeah, pretty easily. It could even become 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it could be a 5/5, coming back around to the first turn it can actually attack. So that's if a creature died on your turn, their turn, their turn, their turn. Now it's your turn again. So that seems good. If it gets 2 turns to attack, it could probably do a lot of damage. But still, it's not going to like end the game in a turn or anything most times. Maybe if you have something like alien or horror-based anthem effects, which are kind of hard to come by, but like maybe you pump this thing's power somehow. This is just a solid Magic card. Evidenced again by the price tag. The lowest price on this is $250. There are versions of it that are like $8. So people like it for obvious reasons. In a vacuum, this card's very powerful. An unblockable, unkillable guy that gets larger every turn is, yeah. I think it's like self-evidently good. So I'll give the card a 6.1 because again, it's kind of, it takes turns, many turns to actually win the game by itself, but sure does do a lot in those few turns. This card's cubable. You got to make sure you have like exile removal in the cube. But next is Kokan Elementalist, or Kokan Elementalist, only ever printed in Ice Age. 2 mana, both black mana, for a 1/1 wizard. It's a human wizard. Pay 2 and a red, target creature gets +1/+0 till end of turn. Pay 2 blue mana, target creature you control gains flying until end of turn. At end of turn, bury that creature. It's pretty bad. That's not very good at all, actually. I remember this guy because I remember thinking he looked cool, but I don't think I ever internalized his text box. Sure, you don't have to tap him. You can do the abilities more than once in a turn, but oof, it's pretty bad, all things considered. So he is Grixis, though. You don't see a whole lot of Grixis cards from back then. But I'll give this guy like a 2.2. Like, I guess there's some playability on him, but not a whole lot. Ooh, Wedding Invitation from Innistrad Crimson Vow. I always thought like this card was pretty good, man. 2 mana for an artifact. When it ETBs, draw a card. Tap it, sack it. A guy can't be blocked this turn. If it's a vampire, it also gains lifelink till end of turn, which is a mode I kind of always forget about. But just, tap, sack it, a guy can't be blocked is pretty good on a Prophetic Prism. Artifact that costs 2, draws you a card when it ETBs. That's just good. That just is already kind of a decent baseline. But when you can tap it for this kind of ability and just win the game, like, that seems good. So I still like this card. I still really like this card. As a matter of fact, you can be mad at me if you want to. Honorary 5. You're going to be so mad at me. What if we hit a better card for Honorary 5? What if we do? I shouldn't do it. I shouldn't do that. 4.5. 4.5 for Wedding Invitation. Come on, Dev. 4.36 for Wedding Invitation. That's my final offer. I can't go below that. I really can't. I really like this card a lot. Moving on to Dark Boar Pathway, though. Originally printed in the list, apparently. That's what it says. Can't be right. This is still like $5 or $6 for a copy of this card from Kaldheim. This, on one side, is just a land that ETB's untapped and taps for green. On the other side, it's a land that ETB's untapped and taps for black. Somehow I mixed up. This side taps for black. This side taps for green. So, all right. So basically you choose when you play the card to the table, you choose which side you want to play, and it's untapped and it taps for that color. That's pretty good. That's actually very good. It turns out untapped lands are always at a premium, like untapped duels effectively are always at a premium, but it's not a duel after it comes into play, which is the issue. But you can just kind of look at what's in your hand or what your game plan is for that game and kind of see what you need to, what color you need to choose. So these are always good. They were fantastic when they were in standard, and they obviously still see some commander play at this price tag. So I'm going to give these a 7.6. Again, I tend to give lands like a really high score, and these aren't going to be any different. An untapped, effectively dual, 7.6. Very good. Log Flume's next. It's an uncard. We don't look at those. Swamp is next. It's a basic land. We don't look at those, but we do assign them 5s. And comment on the art. Cliffchild, you did all right here. It's pretty good. Auntieshav from Lorwyn, and only Lorwyn is up next. This is about $7 to buy right now. Because they didn't really reprint these reveal a creature type lands too much, did they? As Auntieshav comes into play, you may reveal a goblin card from your hand. If you don't, Hobble comes into play tapped. Tap it for a black or a red. So I'm not going to give this as high of a score as I gave the Pathway or whatever those things are called just now. But I will give it a pretty high score, dude. I'm going to throw a 7 this thing's way, because in the Goblin decks that you play it in, or the Changelings decks that you play it in, or whatever, this is basically always going to come into play untapped. Every single time. So an untapped duel is very good, right? So I'm still going to throw a 7 on this. I feel comfortable doing that. Next is World Spineworm from Return to Ravnica. This is still about $5, but if you want the one from Duskmourn House of Horror Commander, it's only $1. It's only $1 right now. Just consider that for a 11 mana guy. This costs 8 and 3 green for a 15/15 worm with trample. He better have trample. When he dies, put 3 5/5 green worm creature tokens with trample onto the battlefield. When it's put into a graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. So do not think that you can just reanimate this 11-drop 15/15 trample. You can't do that. This is a good and bad ability, isn't it? It's really a double-edged sword, but you can, throw this into play with a sneak attack or a surprise, Smuggler's Surprise. It just would not come to me, the name of the card. But yeah, Smuggler's Surprise, Tooth and Nail puts this onto the table. There's a ton of ways to just chunk this onto the battlefield. 15/15, baby. And obviously, if you sneak attack it, it'll die at end of turn, but you get 3 5/5s with trample. So great card, dude. There's a lot of ways to abuse this. Throw it onto the table for a second at least, and then split between 3 5/5 bodies, which is just a beating, man. Very good card. Always has been. Although I don't think played as much in Commander as it once was, because it once was. But nowadays I'm not sure how popular this dude is, but I'm still going to give him a 6.18. Something like that. Very, very powerful Magic card, even to this day. It looks very Timmy-ish, but if you know what you're doing, it's actually really, really good. Next is Strip Bear from Shadowmoor. A single white mana for an instant. Destroy all auras and equipments attached to target creature. That's all it does. Usually the better thing to do would be to pay 1 mana to destroy the creature. But at least this gets rid of their equipments forever. This is I think in most decks you'd rather just play any disenchant ability, any removal ability. So let's just go with a 3.6, which is a bit high. That's a bit high. Let's go with a 2.4. That's a massive reduction in score all at once, but I do think this card is terrible. But it gets a 2.4 because on the occasions when it 3-for-1s, and it's probably worth putting in your deck, but I really don't recommend ever putting this in anything, ever. But next is the 8th Doctor from Doctor Who. 6 mana, 4 a white and a blue for a 4/4 legendary Time Lord Doctor. When it ETBs, mill 3 cards. Once during each of your turns, you may play a historic land or cast a historic permanent spell from your yard. If you do, it gains, if this permanent would leave the battlefield, it gets a finality counter. Exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. So it's also if it would leave the battlefield, which is kind of interesting, not if it would die or anything. So it's not quite a finality counter. I don't love this. It costs 6 mana. 6 mana is too much. Like, even though it does give you something pretty cool to do every turn, you still have to pay the mana to play the stuff out of your yard. So, just not a huge fan. I'm going to give this a... I have to point out it has a unique ability for Commander, but I still think it's just, like, a little underpowered. Let's give this a 3.8, which is... Again, you'll know that is pretty low, but I think it deserves a pretty low score. Next is, it's Mana War, originally printed in Visions over here. The Portal art is cool. I've always liked the Portal art, but much more a fan of the Visions art here. I just really like the John J. Muth interpretation, how huge it looks, the perspective, how simple, too, the sort of brushstrokes are, but how well they come out, how good the lighting is on this thing. It's just really, really good art for this card. This was in 3 separate World Championship decks from 2 different years. That's the reputation that precedes this card. If you want the Arena League one that looks very slick, it is $16.25 to get your hands on this, and it's probably not worth it. But still, you want one from Visions, it's 1 American quarter, and I think that is worth it if you're building cubes. Simplified or old school cubes or starter cubes, this is very, very, very good in. Just kind of teaches you what blue does while still being a solid creature. To this day, I would say this is still a solid creature. But back in the day, it was much, much, much more feared. And I think that I will probably give this the honorary 5 of the day. If I had to rate it now, it's probably more like a 4.6, which is really sad. Again, World Championship card multiple years in a row. This was very good. You have no idea. This is actually one of, not the first, right? But one of the first, like, very strong enter the battlefield trigger creatures that we got in the same set as Necrotal, which basically casts like terror when it enters the battlefield, removes a creature when it ETBs. So Visions was one of the first sets that had like a few different, very powerful ETB triggers, and Mana War kind of earns its spot in history for being one of the better ones, not just from that day, but still endures to this day as a very good one. So honorary 5 for Mana War. I gotta say, I think it's earned it. But that is all of the cards for today. I will see you bright and early. Well, maybe not. On Friday. We'll get one out for you, I promise. Love you. Bye.